There's something that waits within. Something we reach out for every time we lay our heads to rest. A narrow strait between our waking mind and the vast subconscious network that holds together the framework of who we are. The strait we teeter across every time we begin to dream, every time our minds are left unchecked, left to wander, every time we're drawn into the unyielding wrestle with death that is sleep. May 24th, 1987. In the dead of night, Kenneth Parks leaves his home in Pickering, Ontario and drives 23 kilometers to Scarborough, the district in which his in-laws Denise and Barbara Woods reside. From here, he would use a house key they had previously trusted him with to go through the front door, walk straight into their bedroom, and bludgeon Barbara to death with a tire iron, before turning to Dennis and strangling him. Kenneth would then calmly return to his vehicle and drive to a nearby police station to confess his actions. I think I have just killed 2 people. Leading up to the night of the 24th, Kenneth had been down on his luck. His gambling addiction had cost him his finances, leading him into extreme debt, and his decided course of action to correct this debt only landed him in equally steep legal trouble, as he attempted to falsely bill the company he worked at $30,000. Consequently, he was fired from his job and forced to pay restitution. At the time, he was in talks with his in-laws about how he could overcome these issues, with plans to drive out and meet with them to discuss in person about fixing his financial and legal struggles. That drive out obviously never happened, and all of this set up a seemingly cut-and-dry case for his motive and reasoning behind the brutal attack. Yet, his legal defense painted a very different picture. According to Kenneth, he had suffered from a severe case of recurring somnambulism throughout most of his life. Somnambulism, otherwise known as sleepwalking, is a neurological disorder that causes the body to perform complex acts such as walking and talking while asleep, but in extreme cases has been documented to allow actions as difficult as driving to be conducted. In his defense, he claimed that his family history of sleepwalking, in combination with the stress and anxiety he was under at the time, had led him to commit the murder. A defense by means of automatism, which is an involuntary action performed without conscious control or intention. The defense was presented, and after deliberation and testimony of 5 expert witnesses, he was acquitted of both charges. The trial was eventually taken to the Supreme Court, but the ruling was upheld, and while traditionally a case where someone is acquitted by means of not being in control of their own actions would come as a result of an insanity plea, it was determined that the sleepwalking was induced by external factors and could not be linked to a disease of the mind. Kenneth Parks was a free man, and he was only given medication to help with the sleepwalking. While that story was slightly off topic, especially in context of the rest of the iceberg, I think it paints a pretty good picture of the extremes that could happen during sleepwalking. And while obviously not everyone who sleepwalks is gonna kill their family, it's important to note these cases where violence does occur. Many people seem to think that sleep is a one and done process, where we just check out and we're unconscious for 8 hours and then we just wake up rested, perfectly fine. But it's really a lot more complicated than that. See, sleep occurs in 4 main stages. The first 3 stages of sleep all encapsulate the first phase, which is known as NREM, or non-rapid eye movement, which is the more restful period of sleep. And the first stage is really you just transitioning from being awake to being asleep, with your bodily functions slowing down, your heart rate lowering, and you just becoming more relaxed overall. Stage 2 is where the bulk of your sleep occurs, which is more or less just a neutral state of rest. This is where you recover energy and consolidate memories. One of the main distinguishing factors between the stages of sleep are the frequencies of brainwaves produced. So in stage 2, you experience K complexes and sleep spindles, which are both EEG waveforms that contribute to your overall quality of sleep. Sleep spindles are higher frequency waveforms that occur at 14 to 16 Hertz, while K complexes are more akin to the frequency of brainwaves found in stage 3, with them being described as a cliff before a deep ocean. Stage 3 is known as deep sleep, and it very much lives up to that name, as both your physical and mental activity goes to almost non-existent levels. And in this stage, it's very difficult to be woken up. This stage is often referred to as the slow wave stage, as this is where the lowest frequency of brainwaves are produced, which are known as delta waves, and they occur at 1 to 4 Hertz. They ensure that the brain can go through sleep-dependent memory processing, which is an important step in developing and retaining long-term memories. During deep sleep, your sensitivity to external stimuli is extremely low, which means it's very difficult for someone to wake you up. And if you do end up being woken up, you oftentimes can experience sleep inertia, which is where your brain is very delayed in understanding that you've been woken up. So you tend to be very groggy and unresponsive, and it usually takes a little while for you to actually adapt to being awake. Stage 4 can be described as the complete opposite, where stage 3 in deep sleep, you are at a very low level of activity. Stage 4, your activity spikes both physically and mentally. This is where you start dreaming, and this is where you process the most amount of information. This is when your brain is at a level of activity similar to how it would be if you were awake. During REM sleep, as you're dreaming, your body puts a block on your physical movements so that as you're trying to act out motions in the dream, you're not accidentally doing them in real life. This block is known as muscle tone, and it affects everything except for your eyes, which is the reason why rapid eye movement occurs in the first place, because your eyes are trying to focus on whatever you're looking at in the dream. Dreams are the direct reaction to the increased brain activity that happens during REM sleep. Whereas our mind quickly runs through memories, ideas, and experiences, we're presented with a visual representation of how all of these ideas mingle together. Most commonly, dreams are influenced by emotional stimuli and can reflect the mood that we were in the day before. Dreams can also pull from frequent thoughts and ideas we have, but really we don't have any solid explanation for why we do dream or what the evolutionary advantage to experiencing them is. But it is known that many other animal species dream as well. So there is reason to believe that they do pose some tangible benefit. One common theory follows Carl Jung's belief that dreams are a way to tap into our inner subconscious. The subconscious is the theoretical section of the mind that holds the foundational building blocks that dictate who we are, what our personality is like, and who we are likely to become further on in life. This theory can also go a step further with the concept of a collective consciousness that acts as something of a hive mind, an extension of the human psyche that holds universal truths and ideas connected to every living person. And the only way to tap into this collective consciousness is through dreams. A common trend with entries in this iceberg is that they could either be as simple or complex as you want them to be. For example, nightmares. It could be as simple as your brain processing a negative idea and just bombarding you with the visualization of that idea. Or it could be as in-depth as a 20-page dissertation on Jungian psychology regarding the subconscious thought that your ancestral bloodline dies with you, plague be upon ye, famine be upon ye, the dark ages have arrived, all manifesting in a dream in which the goth door lady at Walmart rejected you. For the sake of brevity and my own sanity, I will keep these entries as short and compact as I deem necessary to be both informational and entertaining. So there might be some tangents and there might be some entries that are just very short. But if there's something in this video that you find very interesting and you want to know more about, I very much encourage you to do more research, because almost every entry on here you could just make an entire video about, because there's just so much to all of this. But once again, I'm keeping it short just so I don't go crazy making this, and so the video actually gets completed. But on that note, one very interesting theory for nightmares is that they serve as some kind of exposure therapy. When you have a phobia and you're trying to get over it, like you're scared of spiders, the typical way to go about getting over that fear is to be exposed slowly and in a controlled environment to spiders. So the idea is that dreams serve a similar purpose, where if we have some fear in our life, something that's causing us stress, your dreams are going to expose it to you in a safe and controlled environment where there's no risk of being harmed, and it'll allow you to face it, and it'll allow you to try and figure out some way to get around it. While this isn't a 100% perfect theory, because there are dreams that cause people more stress than the waking world, it is something that I think is pretty interesting, because it makes sense. And it makes extra sense that there are organizations using this exact theory to conduct research into problem solving inside of our dream. Developed by a team of students and researchers at MIT, targeted dream incubation is typically done via a machine known as Dormio, which takes advantage of the brain's sensitivity to external stimuli during the first stage of sleep, and it intermittently wakes you up and presents you with auditory stimuli of what your dream should be about. Basically, imagine it's trying to get you to dream about tennis. So you're just, and the machine is there just like, remember, tennis. So why would you want to incubate? Well, MIT lists several different reasons for why they're conducting this research, but the primary one seems to be for introspection. Remember how I mentioned the subconscious earlier, which is where all these ideas and concepts of who you are stored? Well, the theory is that you can access this through your sleep. And so they're trying to get into the human subconscious to be able to figure out who we are as people and be able to change who we are to better become who we want to be, if that makes any sense. Another reason for dream incubation, this one ties into the nightmare theory from earlier. It's for problem solving. So what they do is they give the college students who they're testing a problem that they need to solve. And as they're going to sleep, they think about this problem and they think about what solutions they've already come up with that don't work. And they think about, what the end goal is and what all the different aspects of the problem are. And for some reason, somehow through dream incubation, they're able to not only envision the problem and all the different little aspects of it, but they're able to come up with a real world working solution. Narcolepsy is a sleep disorder that causes a variety of symptoms that all have to do with excessive tiredness during the day. These symptoms range in severity from excessive tiredness to complete loss of consciousness and other conditions like cataplexy, which is whenever you lose control of your body, almost as if that part of your body is falling asleep on its own. Narcolepsy is defined by an inability to properly cycle through stages of sleep, which can mean even if you get a full 7 hours of sleep, you won't be fully rested because you're not properly going through every stage of sleep for as long as you need to be. This can also lead to the brain entering different stages of sleep when it's not meant to. For example, the symptoms that I mentioned earlier of cataplexy and randomly passing out are a result of the brain trying to enter REM sleep or deep sleep while you are still awake, which results in the muscle tone of REM sleep where you can't control your body. And it can also lead to different side effects like hallucinations and disassociation. While it's not known what specifically causes narcolepsy, individuals that suffer from it typically have a lower amount of hypocretin, which is the chemical in your brain that helps regulate your sleep-wake cycle. While narcolepsy makes you a lot more likely to fall asleep during sporadic intervals, insomnia is the complete opposite, in which you cannot go to sleep no matter how hard you try. As a result, the same symptoms of sleep deprivation that occur with narcolepsy often occur with insomnia. However, the main difference is we do understand to some degree where insomnia comes from. It mostly has to do with your diet and sleep schedule, and also consumption of stimulants like caffeine. Insomnia may also be a result of genetic factors, which usually contributes to more chronic insomnia, which can last for weeks to months. Sleep deprivation is a state in which the body does not get the proper amount of sleep, and as a result, you start experiencing a wide variety of symptoms, both neurological, physical, psychological. You just generally don't have a good time. You start getting really sleepy, you start forgetting things very frequently. You typically start to get pretty irritated. You have less regulation over your emotions in general. It's not a fun time. However, in December of 1963, under the supervision of Stanford sleep researchers Dr. William C. Dement and John J. Ross, with the intention of breaking the world record, 17-year-old Randy Gardner would stay awake for 264 hours and 24 minutes, totaling up to just over 11 straight days of restlessness. After breaking the previous record of 260 hours, Randy is quoted as saying, "I wanted to prove that bad things didn't happen if you went without sleep. I thought I can break that record. I don't think it would be a negative experience at all." While typically the body is able to recover from experiences like staying up for a couple of days, the effects of long-term sleep deprivation can be disastrous, both mentally and physically. Typically, the main one is it increases your risk of severe diseases later on down the line, mainly cardiovascular diseases or anything relating to memory, because sleep is so important in actually maintaining your memory. If you neglect it for long enough, then when you're like 50 or 60, that's when you start getting cooked. Ooh, micro sleep. Afterlife dreams can happen for a myriad of reasons. Whether the person is just super religious, or someone had a near-death experience, or they're just thinking a lot about the afterlife, the brain likes to take these ideas and then form them into some concept that we can visualize in our head. So we get dreams of being in heaven or being in hell. While it may not be a very accurate depiction of what heaven or hell may be, it is the culmination of all the ideas that we have in our head, in our subconscious, visualized by our own brain. And I think that's pretty cool. Or you can believe in a million other things about why we have dreams of the afterlife. Maybe it's God implanting these ideas in our head. Maybe you're just schizo. I don't know. Static dreams, also known as recurring dreams, are dreams that you have time and time again through an extended period of time that typically involve the same activity or the same themes. Around the age of 14, I began having these dreams where I would wake up and my teeth would be falling out of my head. And after they all fell out, I would wake up again and still be in the dream, but my teeth were still gone. And it would be the most visceral, realistic dreams to the point where I would think that I was awake and I would think that for the rest of my life, I'll be toothless. And I think these dreams kept occurring because I had this constant internalized stress over the idea that I was going to graduate high school and I would have nothing. I would have no direction in life and I would have no control over who I would be. Polyphasic sleep is an alternative method to sleeping than the typical monophasic sleep, where you spend 16 hours awake and 8 hours of sleep. Polyphasic is where you segment a time of sleep into separate naps that you take throughout the day. Typically, this could be 20-minute naps to 3-hour naps that you spread out throughout your workday. So you're able to sleep and then you work for a while, and then when you start getting tired again, you sleep again. Which the idea is to combat the fact that as the day goes on, you get more and more tired. So this is like, well, I'm tired, I'm gonna take a nap, and then I won't be tired, and then I'll work, and then I'll be tired, and I'll take a nap, and it's just this constant cycle. The problem with this is that it doesn't really add up to enough sleep. Typically, the polyphasic sleep cycles only give you about 3 to 4 hours of sleep per night for the most popular ones, and I mean, if you've been paying attention so far, sleep is pretty important, and being able to cycle through all the phases of sleep requires you to be asleep for a long amount of time. And the 20-minute naps only really get you to stage 2 of sleep. Binaural beats are essentially 2 separate tones that play at the same time, one in each ear, that produce a third tone. The concept behind this is that when you're in deep sleep, the idea is to enhance the frequency of brainwaves we have in deep sleep by playing 2 frequencies that are related to the delta wave frequencies, and they both match together and give you a tone that'll help you be more relaxed. Does this work? I don't know. The concept is akin to whenever you listen to the Bible in Chinese in one ear and then Mozart reversed at 2 times speed in the other ear, but instead of inducing schizophrenia, it just helps you sleep better. Dream sharing is another one of those entries that can be as complicated as you want it to be. Baseline dream sharing is the activity of sharing the contents of your dream with someone else. Like, you wake up and you're like, that was a crazy dream. I'm gonna text my friend and be like, oh my god, I just dreamed you were a zombie and I killed you with a hammer. Or we could be talking in context of oneaeronautics, which is a word that directly means a voyager of dreams. And this is a word that's typically applied to concepts like lucid dreaming or astral projection, which we'll get into later. But in this context, a voyager of dreams can be seen as someone who voyages from the confines of their own dream and goes into someone else's. While dream sharing isn't a scientifically backed practice, unless you're talking about telling someone your dreams, the concept of dream voyagers isn't scientifically backed. It is something believed by many to be possible, and a lot of people online on the internet, where no one ever lies and ever always tells the truth, they claim to experience it and they claim to be able to do it. I don't know. You guys should do more research if you're interested, though. You lay your head to rest after a long day, hoping to finally get some much needed sleep. You turn on your phone and open YouTube to find a video to watch, but you quickly realize that won't be necessary as you feel your eyelids grow heavy, as your vision starts to fade, and before you know it, you've already slipped into unconsciousness. You wake up hours later in a dazed, recognizing instantly that something isn't quite right with what you're seeing. It's still completely dark, and it's abundantly clear that the sun hasn't risen yet, but that's not what's drawing your attention. There is a man in your room, silently glaring at you from the shadows. Gripped with fear, you try to move, only to realize that your muscles won't cooperate and you're frozen in place. No matter how desperate the signals your brain may be sending are, the commands aren't making it past your cognitive haze, and all you can do is lay in fear, waiting for what comes next. But as the moments pass and nothing does, you realize something else is terribly wrong. You haven't been breathing. You can't breathe. No matter how hard you try, no matter how desperately you think to move, to breathe, to scream, nothing gets through to your body, and you're left alone to endure this torment. Your only company, the silent and foreboding visage of a man who watches callously as you writhe in a motionless hurricane. And suddenly, you're flung upright, desperately wheezing in raspy breaths of air. The man is gone, and you're once again in control of your body. And as the fear slowly subsides, it's replaced by a wave of confusion and concern over what just happened. The reality is, you've just experienced sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is a condition where you're in a state between consciousness and unconsciousness, where you feel like you're awake and you're taking in your surroundings, but you're also still within REM sleep, with the muscle tone of REM sleep, which means you cannot move, you are just stuck there. And since you're still in REM sleep with the brain activity of still being in a dream, you're very likely to hallucinate, which typically manifests in some horrific entity in your room just watching you. That's how most people have it. Sometimes people just see, I don't know, something silly like, oh, what's Bush doing in my room? Why does he have those two towers? But unfortunately, for some people, whenever they get sleep paralysis, it's typically in tandem with sleep apnea, which is like you wake up and you're just there and you cannot move, you cannot breathe, you're just stuck. In my case, whenever I have it, sometimes I wake up and I'm experiencing sleep apnea, so I cannot breathe and I cannot get myself up into a position where I can breathe. There have been points in my life where I'm 99% sure I'm about to die in my bed because I'm just... But yeah, typically sleep paralysis isn't like that, but for me, for some reason, it always is. Sleep apnea is a disorder in which you stop breathing in your sleep. It is as extreme as it sounds. Kind of. It's estimated that over 1 billion people worldwide suffer from some variety of sleep apnea, and I myself have experienced it a couple of times, and it is not fun. The average person, when they have sleep apnea, is just they stop breathing for a couple seconds. Usually their nostrils get clogged or some signal fails to deliver to the brain, so they just... And of course, snoring is one of the major side effects of sleep apnea. Another major side effect is brain damage, which occurs in the more extreme cases. With the number of people that are affected by sleep apnea, there are a couple of different solutions for it, which can range from simple lifestyle changes like dietetics or just being more cautious of how you're sleeping and your posture in general. Two, when you're like dying of sleep apnea, you can get a CPAP machine, which is like the Bane mask, which helps you sleep at night and it forces you to breathe. A little bit extreme, but if you're getting like brain damage from not breathing in your sleep, it's not the worst option in the world. Circadian rhythms are essentially your body's internal sleep clock. So they're based on your exposure to UV light and your already existing sleep schedule. So whatever region you're in, whenever the sun rises, your body will take in the light if you're outside, obviously. So if you stay inside all day, your circadian rhythm is going to be affected. If you don't sleep properly, your circadian rhythm is going to be affected. But generally, your body maintains this rigid schedule of the sun rises, I am awake. The sun sets, I am hit with the chemicals that tell my brain it's safe to go to sleep. And this is a rhythm that goes on because that's how our bodies are designed. And a majority of species have this circadian rhythm where it just controls overall our sleep cycle. Inactive theory is one of the many proposed theories for why we sleep at night. And this kind of ties into circadian rhythm a little bit because, I mean, the reasoning for why we're sleeping whenever it's dark and awake whenever it's bright. Obviously, it's because it's bright and we can see, but also inactive theory goes upon the fact that predators are less active at night, and as a result, we consider it safer. So we find a place to settle down and sleep. But I kind of see this as a self-fulfilling prophecy, like there are less predators, so we go to sleep. And because we're sleeping and we're hiding in some safe position, the predators are less likely to go looking out for food because there's not any food roaming around. And it's a lot harder to find stationary prey than it is to find moving prey. So they're like, okay, whatever, we're going to sleep too. So I just don't see how this is a tier 3 theory because it's pretty self-explanatory. What we could talk about is the ocean at night theory, which has nothing to do with this, but I think it's pretty interesting. DL vertical migration is an observed oceanic phenomenon where, as light diminishes, aquatic life that typically resides in deeper waters will begin to migrate closer towards the surface. The cause of this phenomenon is due to multiple factors, but primarily has to do with the circadian rhythm of the sea life and the fact that predators become far less active at night, making it safe for prey to venture closer to the surface to find food. The inverse of this is also true, where as light increases, predators are more likely to come closer to the surface to search for prey. The cycle can also be impacted by outside events, such as eclipses or, more notably, artificial sources of light, with approximately 22% of the ocean's coastline being illuminated during the night. In the early 2000s, a post-9/11 observational unit detected a vortex off the coast of Djibouti, somewhere out in the deep water Gulf of Aden. The monitored vortex remained in a stable condition until around 2008, when a joint task force consisting of 27 separate naval forces, including most notably China, Germany, and the United States, were sent into the Gulf for the express purposes of fighting pirates. Later, in 2010, a document was released onto WikiLeaks that reportedly contained a conversation from Northern Russian Naval Commander Admiral Maximov and Vladimir Putin regarding the expansion of the vortex and their intentions to join the fight with the rest of the world and resolve the situation. Now, the concept of an artificial sun is nothing new, with countries such as Germany, Korea, and China all pouring money into extensive research of the subject for the purposes of cleaner energy production, with multiple successful prototypes being created. But the theory regarding the Gulf of Aden suggests in the early 2000s a prototype was designed and tested deep below the surface that may have provided just enough simulated sunlight to trick a predator long dormant at the bottom of the Gulf into thinking it was time to resurface once more in search for prey. This theory, while having nothing to do with the iceberg as a whole, suggests that in search of a cleaner source of energy, multiple nations accidentally woke some massive life form off the coast of Yemen using an artificial sun and proceeded to join together to fight it under the guise of combating pirates. Lucid dreaming is a phenomenon in which you're actively aware of the fact that you're inside of a dream. This can happen for a myriad of reasons. As with everything else in this iceberg, there's a million different possible research opportunities. So what I'm going on is that the majority of people who lucid dream don't intentionally do it. It's just a realization that you have whenever something in the dream isn't quite right and it doesn't add up, and you're like, oh, this can only happen in a dream. So once you're lucid dreaming, you typically have more control over the events because it is happening inside of your brain, and it is happening based on whatever thoughts are currently in your brain. So it varies from person to person how much control you have, and it varies from dream to dream. However, there's some people who are really invested into the science behind lucid dreaming, and so they try to do things that incubate these lucid dreams. So for the people who intentionally lucid dream, it can be done through a couple of different ways. The main one is developing checks, where you do something in your waking life constantly, you make it habitual. So whenever you're in the dream, you do it and it doesn't act the same way as you would expect it to in the dream. So you're like, okay, I'm in a dream. And from there, you're able to do the lucid dream fun things. Another way is similar to the dream incubation idea, where you just constantly remind yourself of a concept. In this case, the concept is, I'm going to dream. And then you dream. And you're like, well, I'm in the dream, and then you're good from there. Another way that I find very interesting is by taking stimulants, which some people do. Of course, most of these pills don't do anything. They are very much placebo. I mean, the best you're gonna get is a pill that has some cognitive benefit, some kind of nootropic, but there's one supplement that will guarantee that you lucid dream. Galantamine is a medication that will increase your acetylcholine production, which is a chemical that helps lubricate the flow of neurons. It helps break down buildup in your mind. And of course, this was not developed for lucid dreaming. This is a dementia medication. This is made to help people with mild dementia remember things better. Because acetylcholine is very imperative to your ability to dream and your ability to experience REM sleep, it very much helps if you're trying to lucid dream. It very much helps if you're trying to get very vivid dreams, very detailed dreams, and dreams where you're in control. So I don't know how safe it is. I haven't researched that much. I do know if you take it, you might lucid dream. I do know it's also taking dementia medication, which I'm sure has some variety of side effects just by how extreme it is. But do your own research. Lucid dreaming is one of the deepest rabbit holes that we've gone over so far, just because of how many people have done their own pseudo-scientific research into it and how many people are just obsessed with the idea. It's the same as astral projection, which we'll definitely get into in the next part. But for now, we're going to take this as a stopping point. We've gone through tiers 1 through 3 of the Sleep Mysteries Iceberg. I think it was pretty fun. I had fun. Let me know what you guys think, because this is very much an experimental video, and I will see you guys in the next one.